Good morning. Welcome. I see people here from government, business, education, public organizations, and community groups. Good morning to the people here who have celebrated many MLK days, and good morning to the young people who are here for the first time. Isn't it great that this is what brings us all together? I'd like to thank MLK chairs Norman Clare and Jan Harry, and members of the MLK committee who have worked to present another remarkable program. I'd also like to recognize our financial supporters who make this program possible. Their names are listed in your program. Rosa Parks is one of my favorite figures in recent history, the tiny woman who refused to sit in the back of the bus. My bookshelf at home holds a valuable keepsake, a book with Rosa Parks' autograph. To me, it is a reminder that a small woman can take a big stand, that a simple act can have major ramifications, and that we all possess more power for good in this world than we can possibly imagine. If you enjoy what you see today and feel inspired to get involved with the Diversity Council or simply want to be kept abreast of activities, there's a sign-up sheet in the front lobby. Flyers of upcoming programs are located at your seat and include information about a series on the Middle East, which is a collaboration with the library and Hithergreen, and about our annual November storytelling event, Voices and Stories, Tales from a Diverse Community. Last, I'd like to draw your attention to a new Diversity Council book club where members will read and discuss books related to various aspects of diversity. If you're interested in book group, sign the same sheet that's out in the lobby and just put a star next to your name and we'll know to contact you and give you more information on that topic. But now on with our program. And really, the next person on this program needs no introduction. Sharon Howard currently serves as Director of Marketing and Communications for the Dayton Development Coalition, the region's economic development organization, which serves 13 counties. Previous to this, she had a 20-plus year career in broadcast television as an on-air personality and management executive with local TV stations. Sharon is or has been affiliated with a large number of civic and volunteer organizations in the area, including CultureWorks, Salvation Army Board of Trustees, Dayton Art Institute, University of Dayton, and the Kettering Medical Center Foundation Board of Directors. In December of 2005, she was appointed by former Ohio Governor Strickland to serve on the Ohio Arts Council Board and where she chaired the Education Committee. In July 2010, he reappointed her to a second 5-year term. In 2006, Howard founded the Crown Jewels of Dayton calendar, the initiative to benefit the Kettering Medical Center Foundation's Women's Wellness Fund. After 5 years, this effort has raised $115,000, which is used to help fund free mammograms for underserved and underinsured women in the Miami Valley area. All of this is just a small portion of the tremendous work and impact she's had on the Dayton community. She is a person who, once having met, needs no further introduction, a person who in her own right is a crown jewel. She returns to serve as moderator for our breakfast program this morning. Welcome, Sharon, to our program.
Thank you, Jackie. Happy King Day. Woo! Happy King Day, yes. I always enjoy coming to this event. I asked Norman, I said, Norman, how many years have I done this? And we can't figure it out, but I guess I'm like a bad penny. I just keep showing up. So I am happy to be here and celebrate Martin Luther King and his contributions in Centerville and Washington Township. At this time, we will ask Reverend Dr. David Cottrell, Chaplain, U.S. Air Force retired, to come before us for our invocation.
Let us pray. Let's take a moment of silence to just give thanks for all of those who have shared dreams and visions and have brought us to greater steps as we gather this morning. Lord of dreams and visions, we have heard the dreams and visions of your visionary, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As we honor the memory of this articulate prophet who could rally the black multitudes and who could move the consciences of whites, may we follow his example in resisting oppression in the forms of either hate and love, and commit to his dream of liberty for all. Lord, enable us to join in Martin's vision of a mountaintop experience that allows all to be free at last, free at last. Amen.
If you look around, we have a room full of VIPs. I'm always excited because they always sell this event out, and I appreciate the fact that where a lot of people might be sleeping in, you chose to come and celebrate here in Centerville at Yankee Trace. But we do have some extra special VIPs that I have the pleasure of introducing. A very good friend of mine, County Administrator for Montgomery County, Deb Feldman. Also here is Montgomery County Treasurer Carolyn Rice. Representing the fine city of Centerville, my buddy, Mayor Mark Kingseed. Council members John Beals and Paul Gresham. Washington Township Board of Trustees President Scott Paulson. He's not here yet? Okay. He's coming. He smells the food. I know he's coming. I feel it. I feel it. Trustee members Dale Berry and my friend Joyce Young. Township Fiscal Officer Tom Zobrist. And former township trustee, but now he's a big kahuna in Columbus, State Representative Terry Blair. Let's give all of our elected officials and VIPs a big round of applause. Stop shaking your head, Terry. You know I was going to do it. All right, so please, to give a warm welcome to Centerville, the man I've been standing next to, I think, ever since I've been here, Mayor Mark Kingseed.
Well, good morning, everybody. I do think this is the 12th time that Sharon and I have had a chance to stand up at this podium together, and I want to thank you again for all of your great work at hosting this great event. And I'm also very happy to see so many longtime friends and acquaintances in the audience. This is always a great event and always sold out, and that's because of the great work of the Diversity Committee that serves Centerville and Washington Township. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in January, each January for the last 12 years, because of the work of the Diversity Council, we've gathered here at this place and on this time to celebrate this great man's life and legacy. Now, of course, the selection of the third Monday in January as the day to celebrate Dr. King's life is based on the date of Dr. King's birth. But I do think it is fortuitous that Dr. King was born so close to New Year's Day, because New Year's is a time for reflection on the past, a time for rededication to fundamental principles, and a time for new resolutions on how to conduct ourselves going forward. Because by reflecting on Dr. King's life and by rededicating ourselves to the principles that he believed in, we can become better citizens and better defenders of the American Constitution. Dr. King's entire life, his work and his sacrifice, was based on his focus on the founding American principle set out in the Declaration of Independence. The assertion that God created all of us as being equal, and that the prime reason a government is instituted among men is to enforce the rights that each of us have to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, that original American promise was made long ago. And of course, we all know that that sweeping pledge was not a reality for the vast majority of Americans when it was first made in the 18th century. But as the decades and the centuries passed, brave men and brave women fought to make that promise more real. And Dr. King, reflecting on American history and knowing the power of the original promise, made it his life's mission to force American society and the American government to rededicate itself to the original words and to tear down the walls of oppression and bigotry and prejudice which stood in the way of equal rights for all. And because of Dr. King and because of what he accomplished, America is a much better nation today. And it is much closer to his dream of equality and much closer to his dream of giving all citizens a fair chance to succeed. And because of what he accomplished, all of us have an example of how to live our own lives and of what we can do to make sure that America lives up to what it can be and what it should be. This last fall, I had the opportunity to visit our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And I went to the new monument to Dr. King, which had just been dedicated earlier in the year. And I read his noble words, which are now carved into granite. And as I stood before the imposing stone figure of Dr. King, I followed his gaze over the tidal basin. And as I raised my own eyes, I saw across the water the gleaming white columns of the Jefferson Memorial, with the bronze statue of Thomas Jefferson inside, facing directly back across the water toward Dr. King. And the symbolism of these two monuments moved me deeply, because the man who made the original promise in 1776, the promise that motivated the revolution, and the promise which formed the nation, is now looking for all eternity at the man who helped redeem that promise and make it real for all Americans 200 years later. So I think this is a very important day. The ideas of equality and liberty and justice motivated Dr. King, and they should motivate all of us. All of us should reflect today on the lessons of his life and let us make it our resolution this year and every year in our business, our government, and in our daily lives to demand fairness, respect, and equality for all. Thank you all very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the festivities here on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Representing Washington Township Trustees, Trustee Joyce Young. Please welcome her.
Thank you, Sharon, and good morning to all. I'm just delighted to see you here. As Vice President of the Washington Township Board of Trustees this year, I'm filling in for Scott Paulson. Scott is with his mother in Cleveland. His mother is under observation at the Cleveland Clinic, and so I know we all send our prayers and hopes for her speedy recovery to Scott and his family. It's truly, though, an honor and a privilege to substitute for Scott to bring you greetings for the elected officials in government in Washington Township. Our table includes Dale Berry over there, Tom Zobrist, and Jesse Lytle. And we're delighted to be here this morning. I'm proud to represent Washington Township and to participate in this event, which honors a great man whose courage and vision showed us what the United States could be. Martin Luther King's dream about America was a crucial turning point for all of us, but it was not the beginning of our journey towards equality for all, nor was it the end. What Reverend King showed us is a vision that we must strive to attain. What he gave us is inspiration to tackle the work that we must do to accomplish this great vision. And what we have, ladies and gentlemen, right here this morning is a striking example of the work that must be done to work toward his vision. What is this striking example? They are so much a part of this morning's celebration that we take them for granted. It's your friends and neighbors who are the faithful and dedicated members of the Diversity Council that have worked to promote diversity and tolerance in Washington Township and Centerville for the past 12 years. Since Washington Township strongly supports the mission of the Diversity Council, I'd like to just take a few minutes to honor them and to pay tribute to these people who you really don't see, but who work throughout the year making sure that the message of diversity and tolerance is spread throughout the schools, governments, and people of Washington Township. Over 12 years ago, the Diversity Council was started at St. Leonard's. They saw the need for active efforts for diversity in our community, and they hosted several years of early morning breakfasts to bring us together. Soon, the Washington Centerville Library took on the job of hosting the breakfast, and the council became formalized. So I would like to recognize some of our outstanding members who have been with us since the beginning, and we'll start with our honorary member, and that, of course, is Sharon Howard. Yay. She's our honorary member. Jenny Rohr helped lead the way to make the council reality. And Georgia Mergler was the faithful person who opened the library early for our meetings, even though she had to come down from the north. She is currently serving as our vice president. Carol Kennard has been a strong supporter from the beginning and currently does our public relations. Norm Player, every year he says, no, I'm not going to do it. And every year he does it. He steps in to keep us going. Jim Reppert was early on the one who got our fund resources to keep the council going. Florence Kraling, Karen Dempsey-Vogue, Doris Ponitz, and Bob Daly. Bob is here with his camera this morning. They've always been ready to serve, and we thank you. I'd also like to recognize some of our past chairs who've lent their invaluable and remarkable time and talent to the council. Tony Perry Gillespie is here, Mike Castle, Jan Harry, Jennifer Wilder, and of course our current chair, Jackie Curl. And this year we have, besides the people I mentioned, Helen Agno-Benny, Joe Lambright, Bob Yucks, Carol Ware, Jerry Huffman, and Dahalia Brown on our board. These are the people that are leading us on the march to Martin Luther King's vision. Keep your eye out for some of their future programs and join them in this wonderful work that we must be committed to do together. Support them and thank them for the great job they're doing. Thank you very much.
One thing I'm going to go off script, which is always kind of scary. I know, I'm glad Norm's not here. He's probably freaking out. The wonderful thing about being the MC is once you start the program, they can't stop you. I forgot a VIP that I really feel should be recognized, particularly at this breakfast, knowing the vision and the mission of this organization. This woman has been an active participant, leader in this community for more years than I can remember. She has fought for civil rights. She has fought for the rights for women. She has fought for the rights for students. She has fought for the rights for the poor. She lives her life personally by the ideals that Martin Luther King set before us. She has worked so hard, and I guess God said, well, I guess you get to retire, which I don't understand why she is. But I do want to make a special point of recognizing, and I hope you will do the same, of recognizing my dear friend and sorority sister, Pat Meadows, who is the Executive Director of the National Conference for Community and Justice. She has done so much good work, and she has such a great spirit, and I'm jealous that she's retiring, but that just means she has more time to work in the community. So we thank you for your service, Pat. So now, the reason that we are here. In the early evening of December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks finished her work as a tailor's assistant in Montgomery, Alabama's largest department store and walked to the bus stop. After a long day of work, she was tired and just wanted to get home with some Christmas presents she had purchased. At that time in history, Montgomery, Alabama, like many other southern states, had a law in existence that required blacks to give up their seats to a white person when told to. When the bus driver, whom Parks had defied years before, ordered her to give up her seat for a white man, she replied, no. She was sitting in the unreserved midsection of the bus, and no vacant seat was free. So she would have had to stand while carrying her Christmas packages. She felt that she had been pushed as far as she could, and she says, I'm not anymore. Ms. Parks was arrested and then bailed out later that night. Her simple refusal to give up her seat was a defining moment in the history of what became the civil rights movement and led to a 13-month strike against the Montgomery, Alabama city bus line, in which the black population refused to ride the buses, creating a financial crisis for the bus company. That event propelled Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. into prominence as a leader of the movement and eventually resulted in a November 1956 Supreme Court decision overturning segregated transportation, which had been legalized since 1896. Ms. Rosa Parks is with us here today, personified by Ms. Sherry Tolliver, and she has come to tell Rosa's story. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Rosa Parks.
Thank you. It's certainly a pleasure to be here and to see so many friendly faces. I notice you ladies up here in the north don't wear your hats and gloves when you come indoors. But I'm certainly very, very happy to be here, and we have come a long way from December the 1st, 1955. As my introducer was saying, at that particular time, even though we as blacks had been freed from the chains of slavery for over 90 years, we still had to move to the back of the bus when it came to the American dream. Didn't matter if you wanted to get a drink of water. When you went to the water fountain, there was a white fountain and a colored fountain. If you wanted to use the ladies' room in a public place, there was a white women and a colored women side, if there was one for the colored ladies. But the bus was a daily indignation that so many of us there in Montgomery had to deal with. You see, the custom at that time was you boarded the bus, you paid your fare, it was a dime. But if you were colored, you put in that dime, then you stepped off the bus, walked to the back door, and then got in on the bus from there. It was a daily insult for hundreds of us. And the bus drivers could be so mean and surly at times. Many times they would allow us to get on and pay our fare, and then when we got off, they would just take off and leave us standing there. We did a lot of walking during the boycott, but I tell you, many of us had done a lot of walking before that, just because we didn't want to have to deal with that humiliation every single day on the buses. Now, I suppose my whole life there was just something in me that made me rebellious against being ill-treated. I think it went back to my grandfather, And my mother and father, my grandfather, I recall as a child, the Ku Klux Klan was terrorizing people there in Tuskegee, where I was born. And they would ride around my grandparents' farm at night. And my grandfather would tell us to sleep with our clothes on in case anything happened. And he would sit by the front door with his shotgun. And we thought that was exciting. Because we were just little children. We had no idea what it really meant. He'd say, I'll have the gun, you go out the back door, and I'll at least get the first couple of them so you children can get away. Now, as a grown woman, I think how sad that was, that my grandfather had to tell us that, and we were just little children, and we didn't even know why any of that was happening, not at that time. Now, little by little, I began to figure out just what this whole segregation thing really was. We moved from Tuskegee to a little town where my mother was a teacher in a little school for black children, and it was the only school for black children, so all the children went. They didn't go all year long because they had to pick cotton when it was time to pick cotton, and they had to plant cotton when it was time to plant cotton. So there was one school, a few books, a few desks, and every day when we'd be walking to school, we'd see the white children ride by on the bus. And we would walk to our little school, and they would ride the bus to their brick school with glass windows and classrooms for each age group. And little by little, I began to understand things were not fair. They just weren't fair. And my grandfather told us, I want you to get your education so you don't have to work for somebody else that won't treat you right. You learn as much as you can. So my mother saved up enough money to send me to the Montgomery Industrial School for girls. We moved to Montgomery because she wanted me to have that education, and my brother Sylvester. And the Montgomery School for Girls was started by a lady named Alice White. She was from Massachusetts. She was a spinster lady, that's what we called her. And she had moved to the South because she wanted to open a school for Negro girls. She didn't call it the school for Negro girls, but she called it the school for industrial school for girls because she got the biggest kick out of people sending her letters thinking it was a white school, and then they would show up with their children and find out that it was colored, and they would be shocked and appalled. And she said, well, they could get an education here. You're more than welcome to leave your children, and they'd leave insulted. And she didn't have any problem with them. She was glad to see them go. They burned this white school down 2 times, and she built it back up until she was too old finally to wrestle with it any longer. But all the teachers there would make us stand up every morning and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we would say something about how we knew that we were not going to set our sights any lower than anyone else just because we were black. We had a right to dignity, we had to respect ourselves, and we were expected to make something of ourselves. I'll never forget the first week I got there. Everybody was all excited because we were going to have this visitor come from Chicago. Very welcome in. Julius Rosenwalker. He was the Sears Roebuck Company, and he was one of the benefactors of the school. And the only person that wasn't excited was Miss White. She said, children, you comport yourself on a daily basis as ladies. I don't expect any more or any less. She didn't make a big fuss about it. But I recall him coming into the classroom and standing and asking a few of the girls questions and thinking, well, there's one person who thinks that we're important enough to come and visit us and not be shocked when he sees a room full of little colored girls. Now, I wanted to go on to college. That was Mama's dream, but my grandmother became ill, so I dropped out of high school and began working. As I said, at the industrial school, we learned trade, so I became a seamstress. And you should see some of the quilts I've made. You need them up here. I should have brought some. Well, at any rate, I'll make sure to send some up to you. I dropped out of school, and I began working. And I remember one time I went into town with my brother Sylvester to get him a haircut. And we went into the barber shop, and there was this good-looking man there. Very good-looking man. And he said hello to me, and I didn't pay him any mind. I was thinking about going home and finishing my work. The next thing I know, my brother comes home and tells me, Raymond says he wants to meet you. And I said, beg pardon. And he said, the barber, Raymond Parks, he wants to meet you. And after a while, he came driving by my house in this little red sports car. Thought he was jazzy. I wasn't paying him any mind. The only thing I was thinking about was taking care of my grandmother and getting my education. Maybe I could go back to school and get my high school diploma. That was so important to me because in Montgomery, if you were colored, you couldn't vote unless you had a high school diploma. But the thing was, there was no public high school for colored children in Montgomery. That's the way segregation worked. You were set up to fail. You were set up to always be behind. But Alabama State College had a school program for high school students if you could get in. They only had a few places, not enough for all the Negro children there. But I wanted to go to Alabama State and get my high school diploma. So I wasn't studying a man and getting married. But the next thing I know, Raymond's coming to call on me. He came and knocked on the door, and Mama said, Raymond Parks is down here. Come courting. You want to speak with him? And I was so shy, I just ran upstairs and hid in my room and said, tell him I'm not here. He was persistent, though. And I suppose the reason why I allowed him to come calling on me was he was one of the few colored men I had met who wasn't afraid. He was proud. And he said, we're going to have to change things down here in Montgomery. We've been living like this long enough, putting up with somebody's foot on our neck long enough, and I intend to do something about it. He reminded me of my grandfather. I like that. So one day, Raymond being Raymond, he said, Rosie, you know we're going to get married. I didn't say anything. We just started talking. He never did ask me. He just told me we were going to get married. So we got married right there in my mother's house. And then I found out how serious Raymond really was about changing things. I'm sure some of you have heard about the Scottsboro boys, the 9 young men who were hoboing across country on the train, and they got arrested and accused of raping 2 white women. Now the women recanted their story, said that they had made it up because they didn't want to get arrested. Didn't make any difference. This was the South. And just the mere hint of any kind of impropriety between a black man and a white woman, they were lucky they just got arrested. They could have been lynched. Well, Raymond and some of the other men in Montgomery, and indeed people all over the country, I found out, but in the South, quietly and secretly began meeting to raise money and discuss strategies for how they were going to get a defense for these boys. And when you think about it now, you think, well, why would anybody have to meet quietly and secretly to talk about a public case? I'll tell you why. Because when one of the men was discovered being on the committee and raising money because he was on the phone and someone overheard him, the next day his wife found him dead. So they went from house to house and they didn't let anybody know where they were going to be meeting. And when they had the meeting at our house, I remember sitting on the porch. I've never shook so hard in my life. I was so nervous. I called my friend and asked her to come sit with me, Johnny Mae Carr. We went to school together. And she sat there with me. She said, Rosie, you were shaking so hard, you made the chair swing, and it wasn't even a swinging chair. And the police actually did drive by. But Raymond went out the back door. And so they didn't see him. They just saw me and Johnny Mae sitting on the porch, and they went on. His life was in danger. But I never asked him to stop, because I knew if we weren't willing to do something, things would never, ever change. Never change. So Raymond invited me to come along to the NAACP meeting, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And when I got there, I met Mr. Nixon, E.D. Nixon. Mr. Nixon was about 6 feet so tall, jet black skin, had a rough voice like this, and he was no nonsense. He was a Pullman porter, and he had worked with A. Philip Randolph, getting the Pullman porters together, organizing them so they'd be treated right on their jobs. And now they were talking about getting names and getting documentation of people who had been harassed, people who had been lynched, women who had been raped by white men, and the grand jury would not indict them. And they needed somebody to take the notes. Well, they looked around, and I was the only woman at the meeting. So they said, well, Rosa, you be the secretary. I said, all right. Now, I didn't have any problem doing that. I wanted to help in any way I could. The funny thing was, though, Mr. Nixon was one of them old-fashioned Southern men, and some of you know what I'm talking about. Anytime he'd read in the paper or see where some woman had done something, he'd say, oh, these women, they're getting too big for their britches. They need to go home and cook and stay home with the children. And I'd say, well, I guess I better go home and cook my husband's meals. No, Rosa, we need you. Don't leave. Better had said that they weren't paying me anything. Didn't matter about the money. They sent me all over the South to interview people so that it would be on record. Yes, I was unjustly accused. Yes, the Ku Klux Klan came to my home. Yes, they harassed me. Yes, they beat my brother, my son. Yes, they burned down our home because the law would not prosecute anyone for these crimes. So I kept these records year after year, heard some horrible stories. We would present them to the grand jury. They'd say they would look into it, but nothing would happen. But in the meantime, I got a job with a lady named Virginia Dewar. Her husband was Clifford Dewar, and her brother-in-law was a Supreme Court justice. And he was one of the justices that overturned segregation in the schools when there was Brown versus the Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. And Mrs. Dewar was from old money in the South. She was a debutante. She was a socialite. But she said what changed her was when she went north to college and she sat down in the cafeteria to have her lunch, and a black girl came and sat down at the table and started eating. And she didn't know what to do. She'd never seen anything like that. She said, might as well have been a peacock had flown in there and sat at the table. I didn't know what to do. And I looked around and I was waiting for someone to tell her that she was getting out of her place and she had to move, but nobody did. And then I sat there and looked at her. She looked at me and she went back to eating. And I said, well, I have a choice. I can either get enraged and get up and leave and complain, or I can sit here and eat my lunch and act like a human being. And that's what she did. And that changed her. That changed her. So I started working for her. Her daughter was getting married, and I was sewing her daughter's trousseau. I made her wedding gown and all the lovely things she wore for her wedding. And Mrs. Dewar and I would talk. And she said, Rosa, there's a school in Tennessee called the Highlander School. Miles Horton and his wife are there. And they used to train people in the labor movement to protest and stand up for their rights as workers. Now we want to help train people to stand up for their rights and desegregate the South. Now, I've never heard a white person speak anything like that. I didn't know if I could trust her. I didn't know if she had heard something about Raymond working with the Scottsboro boys and she was trying to get information. This was the South. I didn't know. But little by little, I began to trust her, and I told her, all right, I'll go. Now, I want to clear up a few things. I've never been comfortable with people calling me the mother of the civil rights movement. There's always been a civil rights movement in this country. From the very first day, the very first slaves stepped foot on soil in this country, there's been a civil rights movement. I suppose the difference was this was a mass movement because all of us organized to change something, but I wasn't the first person to get arrested. In fact, when I was born in 1913, around that time, there had been a boycott at that time to stop segregation on the buses, but they weren't able to sustain it. And they went right back to separate but equal. That's what the law said. But the women in Montgomery, you see, again, this was the South. And they prided themselves on gentility and ladies being treated as ladies and gentlemen tipping their hat to ladies and being courteous and chivalrous. But none of that was ever shown to a black woman. If a white woman came in the room, of course they'd all stand up and tip their hats and give her a chair. That didn't happen when we walked into a room. We were expected to stay in our place. And so there was a double insult of seeing this live, this chivalry and this gallantry, and then being treated less than human on a daily basis. So the women in Montgomery for over 3 years had been talking to the mayor, well, not talking to him because he wouldn't talk to us, but writing him letters and telling him how insulting and humiliating it was for us to ride the buses, and that we were planning to boycott if something didn't change. And it all fell on deaf ears. I wasn't the first person to get arrested. In fact, the day that I got arrested, I was on my way to meet with my youth group. I had a youth group with the NAACP. And what I did was I trained them. Every Saturday we would meet, and once a month I would have them come in and I'd line them up and inspect them. Their nails had to be clean, their hair had to be brushed and combed, their faces had to be clean, their shirts had to be starched, their shoes had to be polished, because we were walking into town, we were going to the public library, and one by one I would have those children ask for a book. A simple thing. But in Montgomery, Alabama, it was an act of sedition for a colored child to walk into the public library and ask for a book, because we weren't allowed to take books out. You could come in and ask if they would send the book, please, to the colored library, and the librarian would send it a week later, but you couldn't come in and take a book off the shelf. And so I trained the children to walk up one at a time and say, I'd like to get a book on the history of World War I. And the librarian would say, well, I'd be very happy to send it to the colored library. And then I had the children say, well, ma'am, I'm doing a report in school, and it's due next week, and I'm here now. Wouldn't it be simpler just to let me have the book? Now, in defense of the librarians, they never called the police. They never hollered or screamed or insulted my children or sent them out, because secretly they were on our side. They knew how ridiculous this whole dance that we had to do was. So they would say, I'm very sorry, young man or young lady, but I have to obey the rules, but I will get this book to you as quickly as possible. And then I would tell the children to say, thank you very much. I'm sorry that you can't help me, and walk out. Small steps, but I was teaching those children, doesn't matter that you're only 10, 11, 12 years old, you can stand up for yourself. You can look injustice in the eye with dignity, calmly, peacefully, and say, this is wrong. So that day when I got on the bus, I wasn't thinking about getting arrested. Some people say it was planned. It wasn't planned, not by me. But the women had been planning to boycott. And there was a young girl in my group, Claudette Colvin, who had been arrested just a few months earlier on the bus because she refused to give up her seat. And in fact, when the lawsuit went forward, my name wasn't even on it. There were 4 other women, Claudette included, who sued the city and the bus company. So none of this happens because of one person. Everybody, little by little, worked together. So I get on the bus, coming from the Montgomery Fair department store where I was a seamstress, and I had my bags, and I looked up, and I saw the bus driver, and realized that's the same bus driver that put me off the bus before. And normally, if I saw him in the driver's seat, I wouldn't even get on the bus with him. But that day I was busy, I wanted to get home, so I didn't notice it. And I sat in the middle section. There was a sign on the back of the seats that as the front filled up, they would move the sign back. The colored section got smaller and smaller, till it was just the back of the bus for me. Well, I'm sitting in this section. There was a gentleman next to me and two ladies across the aisle. And several white people got on at the second stop. And the gentleman came and stood, and he was just standing there. He didn't say anything to me. It's custom. Nobody has to say anything. Everybody just goes along with it until somebody does it. And so the bus driver said, I don't need those seats back there. And then I realized who it was. And the gentleman next to me got up, and the two ladies got up. See what? Not only could we not sit in the white section, you could not sit next to or across the aisle from a white person. So for this one man to sit down, all four of us had to get up and move back. So three of them got up. And I just said to myself, today is the day that I'm going to make it known that I'm not going to accept this kind of treatment anymore. I'm just not. I have a right to sit in my seat. I paid my fare. And I'm not going to get up. It wasn't because my feet were tired. It was because my spirit was tired. So the bus driver said, you're going to get up out of that seat. As the bus driver had police powers. They carried guns with them. And in fact, in 1950, a man was shot because he refused to get off the bus and killed by the bus driver. So I said, I didn't say anything. So he got up and came down the aisle. Look here, you're going to get up, or I'm going to have to call the police and tell them to take you to jail. You going to get up out of that seat? I told him no. Got real quiet. Some people start growing. Now, why she want to start trouble? Let's get up so we can keep going. Nobody said anything to me. Nobody supported me. I felt all alone, but I wasn't alone. I felt the power of my family and all the people who told me that I was somebody, and all the things that I had seen that were done wrong. And so I just sat there. So he said, are you going to get up? And I told him no. He said, well, I'm going to call the policeman, then he's going to carry you to jail. I said, well, you may do that. Now, going to jail is not a pleasant experience. It was the worst day of my life. Policeman came on the bus and said, ma'am, why won't you give up your seat? And I said, why don't you stop pushing us around? I said, ma'am, I don't know about that. I just know the law's the law and you're going to have to come to jail. So they carried me to jail. Wouldn't let me make a phone call. Wouldn't even let me have a drink of water. Finally, they made sure to let me have a drink of water and they let me call home. And of course, word has spread that I had gotten arrested because stopped traffic and the police came and made a big scene. So my mother answered, oh, Rosa, you all right? Did they beat you? Did they hurt you? Are you hurt? Are you all right? I said, Mom, I'm all right. Just please tell Raymond to come get me. Well, we didn't have a car, so Raymond called Mr. Nixon. Mr. Nixon called jail. They wouldn't tell him anything. So Mr. Nixon called Mr. Durham, Miss Virginia's husband, Clifton Durham. He was a lawyer. They told him everything. So Mr. Durham and Mrs. Durham got in their car, got my husband, got Mr. Nixon. They all came down to the jailhouse to pick me up. They came running in, and Mrs. Durham ran up to me and hugged me, and all those white people stepped back. This was the white people didn't hug black people. You didn't do that. But Virginia Durham wasn't like that. She was the first person. She beat Raymond to me. She beat my mama to me. They took me home, and Mr. Nixon, ED said, Rosa, look what segregation has put in my hands. I said, what is he happy about? He said, your case would be the perfect case. Perfect. They don't have anything on you. You're a registered voter. You're a married woman. You're a fine citizen. You teach Sunday school. You're a perfect lady. They can't say one thing is wrong with you for why you can't sit in your seat on the bus. Raymond said, oh, no. No, no, no. Now, Raymond was one of the bravest men I'd ever met in my life. That's why I married him. But the thought of his wife being subjected to this and him not being able to defend me was too much for him. He finally relented because I said, Raymond, we have to do this. But I'll tell you, my husband was never right after that. It just broke him that he could not defend me. See, once all this started, we got phone calls, night and day, threatening to kill me, threatening to drag me out of the house. I lost my job. Raymond lost his job. Those were hard times. I got letters. He was so worried about me that he couldn't protect me, that he never was right again after that. But he never said, Rosa, stop. He never said stop. He knew that was the price we had to pay. Now, once I got arrested, Joanne Robinson, she was a professor at Alabama State College. She was one of the ladies on the committee that was writing to the mayor asking him to please do something about the buses. And all we asked for at first was three things. For the bus drivers to be courteous to us, stop calling us out our names, stop driving off after we pay our fare, stop mistreating us, to hire some Negro drivers on Negro routes, and to leave the colored section colored and the white section white so you wouldn't have to get up out of your seat. That's all we asked for at the beginning. The mayor said no, no, and no. So Joanne, when she found out I got arrested, she ran to the office in the middle of the night, got cranking. Some of you remember that mimeograph machine? 35,000 copies. And had her students take them all over the city the next day. The flyer said another Negro woman has been arrested and put in the jail because she refused to give up her seat to a white person. The next time it could be your daughter or your wife or your mother. Stay off the buses on Monday. That's what happened. Monday morning, there were about 5 people on the bus. None of us knew if it was really going to work because most colored people in Montgomery had to ride buses, didn't have cars. But we made it work. All the churches had station wagons and they turned them into taxis. We called them rolling churches. All the colored cab drivers only charged people a dime, just like the bus would have instead of cab fare. That was the first day. We got that far. Then we decided we're not getting back on those buses until things change. And that's when Dr. King was chosen to be the leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association. We picked him because he wasn't from Montgomery, and he wasn't loyal to anybody. He wasn't in anybody's pocket. He was free of all those attachments that people get when they get a little power, then they owe people things. He didn't owe anybody anything. He was 27 years old, fresh out of college, just got his doctorate. He had a beautiful wife. I had never met him. I'd met her because she sang. She would sing for the NAACP to raise money. She had a beautiful voice. They just had a little baby. And so I hadn't even met him. But that Monday at the Hope Avenue Baptist Church, everybody came piling in. There were so many people they had to put speakers outside. And that's when Dr. King, he said that was the hardest speech he ever gave because he couldn't write it. So he just said, I'm going to stand up there and just say what I have to say. And when he got through talking, he said there comes a time when the people get tired. Tired of the brutal feet of oppression kicking them around. But let it be known that there were a race of people, black people, who stood up for justice, who stood up for freedom. We walked for 381 days. We walked. Some people rode mules, got in those rolling churches. Some people rode bicycles. One time I remember Mr. Nixon and I went all the way to Georgia, got a whole truckload of bicycles and brought them back. People walked. When they walked, these hoodlums would drive by and throw balloons at them with urine in them. Dr. King said, we are peaceful, we're not retaliating, we're strong, we're united, but we're nonviolent. We be walking and singing. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, you know that one. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Walking and singing. Churches got bombed. Dr. King's house got bombed twice. Mr. Nixon's house got bombed. The house where the church where we had our meetings for the youth group, the Lutheran church, Pastor Grant, the white minister, they bombed his home. We had to convince him to leave town. They were going to kill him because he had betrayed his race in their eyes. And he had a little baby. We put him on the bus and made him leave town. It was very, very difficult. Many people lost their jobs. People would come and pour acid on the cars. Then the police started harassing the people that were driving. They'd say, you were going 26 miles an hour. It's 25 miles an hour. No. Then they canceled all the insurance on all the cars. We had to go all the way to Atlanta Life Insurance Company to get insurance secretly so that we could still drive and have insurance. They tried everything they could think of to discourage us, but we had made up our minds that we were going to get our rights. So on that first day when the strike was over and we got on the buses, don't you know that same bus driver was driving the bus? Same bus driver. I said, well, 3 must be the charm. Yes, sir. So I'm on my way to the airport. I've got to go to San Francisco to speak and raise some money for the NAACP because it costs money to do a lawsuit. We're still paying those bills, and now that we've got this thing rolling, we're going to start strikes in other cities in the South. We're going to break this thing. Fred Gray, who was my lawyer, came up here to Ohio. He went to Cleveland, Ohio, Case Western Reserve Law School. He said the only reason he went to law school was to become a lawyer so he could break segregation all the way down. So I'm on my way to San Francisco. I want to thank you for your support, for inviting me up here to speak with you. If I had known how cold it was going to be, well, it doesn't matter. You have to do what you have to do. Thank you so very much.
Anyone have a question for Rosa?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What did the bus driver say to you when you got on the bus?
He didn't say a word. And just as a footnote to that, even though the law had been changed, people's hearts hadn't changed. So the first few weeks, there were snipers firing in the windows, shooting out the windows in the buses. Girl got killed. A girl was beaten to death by a group of hoodlums, young teenage girl. It took a while, and many, many sad, heartbreaking things happened, but we were so committed to being nonviolent that it shamed them because we were just demanding what we rightfully deserved. They were the ones that were breaking the law. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, please again give a warm applause for Sherry Tolliver. Sherry is an actress with an organization called Women in History. And you have a question, sir?
I just wanted to give an update on the family you mentioned that you put on the bus to send out of town.
Yes.
That was my family.
Praise God.
And my parents now live in Montgomery.
Jean and Robert, right? Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. I wanted to. I put your father's book, White Preacher's Memoir, on my Facebook page today.
White Preacher's Message is the next.
Yes. Oh my God, I don't know what to say.
Students next month down to Montgomery.
Oh, that's wonderful. Please give him my regards and my admiration. Thank you. Wow.
That's amazing.
I wanted to say one more thing. I get to talking, well, Rosa gets to talking, and there's so much to the story. I want to encourage all of you So many people think that she was an old lady whose feet hurt and she just decided not to get off the bus. Well, I gave you a piece of how that's not true. Go to the library and get the books. Get his father's book. Get her book. Get The Walking City. Get Bus Ride to Freedom. There are so many. This was one of the most amazing movements in history, not just American history, not black history, world history, the history of this bus boycott. It's fascinating how all the people that are involved. There's so many people I didn't name. And one other thing I want to mention is that this was an international news story. It wasn't just something that people talked about here. In India, they named Rosa Parks Mahatma Rosa. They got money from all over the world. People sent donations to them because they knew that everybody was losing their jobs. People sent shoes, they sent clothes. They got letters from Spain. Rosa Parks kept all these letters from Spain, Germany, Chile, India, Japan, Russia. It was international. It's really an amazing story.
You did amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. That was awesome. Wasn't that awesome? Yes, awesome. One of my favorite parts of this program is the community pledge. I mean, it's so progressive for this area to have a pledge so many years ago. Please welcome Darren Rayner from Spring Valley Academy. Is Darren here? Come on up here, Darren. Darren's going to lead us in the community pledge. Good morning.
Good morning. I have not always valued people who are different. I pledge to honor dignity and character of every human being. I have not always practiced compassion for people. I pledge to oppose injustice, not evil. I have sometimes been more concerned about my rights than the rights of others. I pledge to dedicate myself to use my talents to empower others as I empower myself. I have not always stood up against injustice or denounced violence. I pledge to consciously practice peace on a daily basis. I have sometimes been reluctant to embrace differences and appreciate the value of every human being. I pledge to treat each person that I meet with courtesy, respect, and fairness. Thank you.
Don't you just love his voice? Darren, you have a future. I pledge. How old are you? 17. My goodness, what a wonderful voice. Okay, Norman, take a deep breath. It's almost over. Please welcome Norman Player, Acting Chair, 2012 MLK Breakfast Committee. Take a deep breath, honey.
Thank you. On behalf of the members of the Diversity Council, I'd like to say thanks to each and every one of you for attending our 12th consecutive Martin Luther King Day celebration and breakfast. It may interest you to know that of the 12, this is the 9th total sellout. You are part of history. Thank you. As you well know, the Diversity Council is made up of volunteers. We have a small core group that did the planning for this that I'd like to acknowledge while I'm up here. Jan Harry was chair and had to step aside temporarily, and I stepped in as acting chair. Joe Lambright, Jerry Huffman, if you would please stand and be acknowledged. Doris Jenkins, And we have someone else? I think that, trying to remember. They say the memory goes first, and mine went. We also had a few volunteers to help us with the logistics today. Dahalia Brown was one of them. Kara Ware was another. And of course, Jackie Curl stepped in and helped out as well, as did Georgia Mergler from the Centerville-Washington Library. Thank you all. As you depart, one thing I would ask of you now, put on your calendar the third Monday in January 2013, because we will be back. I anticipate having another program right here, 365 days from now, and you're all invited. Reservations, we're going to try to work with the city again, and reservations will start being taken about the Thanksgiving, thereabouts right after Thanksgiving. There will be announcements in the paper and locally. So please come back, and my thanks to each and every one of you. You noticed on the inside cover is a list of the donors. Without the support that we've had from the donors who are listed there, and those who did in-kind treatments as well, we could not make it as a volunteer organization. So let's give a round of applause for all volunteers, whether you're part of the Diversity Council or not. And remember, the Diversity Council is an equal opportunity non-employer, and we welcome volunteers. Thank you very much.
I want to just concur with Norm and say, please make a point to, before you leave, to come up and thank our sponsors. I like to always tell people, do business with the people who are doing business with us today. So please come up and offer your thanks. And as I always do, I always say the best for last. I always honor young people who chose not to sleep in this morning, who got up, they came, they paid attention, were courteous, smiles on their faces. I would ask every student in the room to please stand and let us thank you. I think that is so awesome. I do tons of events, and rarely do I look before a group to see so many young people in the audience. So we do appreciate and thank the young people for coming today. Please welcome back Reverend Dr. David Cottrell, chaplain, U.S. Air Force retired. He will give us our benediction, and then you will be on your day. And I would hope that if you are able, that you would meet at Welcome Stadium at 10:30. The march will begin at 11. Please welcome Reverend Cottrell.
Now may the Lord, who took the hand of Moses and led his people out of slavery and made them free at last, continue his liberating work following the example of Martin Luther King by inspiring us to join in resisting oppression and seeking for all freedom's blessings.